Blackbird pilot, and my friend Colonel Harlon Hain.
Where's the button? Good morning. Real pleasure to be here, and I apologize to every one of you. I didn't know this organization existed. And I will cut mine very short because I covered about 3 hours of it last night and this morning for those that were present. But I'll give a quick overview. I was a third of 5 children born on a farm in southwest Missouri. And when I was a child, it was a ritual to go to town every Saturday afternoon. Less than 35 years later, I crossed the United States in less time than it took us to get to town on Saturday. That was progress. I enlisted in aviation cadet in June 1944. I was discharged in 45 when the war was over at Denver, Colorado. Recalled in, I didn't know I'd signed up for the reserves. I was recalled in 1950, and I applied for everything in direct commission, OCS, and pilot training, and they all came through, but it was between Christmas and New Year's, and there was nobody in the commander's office out at Lowry, and I barged in like I knew what I was doing. And you want to know what I could do? And I said, I got to plant some trees on your base. And then on Monday, the squadron commander come in, and I was restricted for 2 weeks for going to see the commander without permission. I graduated in pilot training with Howie Pearson is here. I haven't seen him since 1982. In April of 52, I was sent to Korea, the 18th Fighter Bomber Group, where I flew Mustangs. We were supposed to have 86s when I got there. But our 86s were right over there with UHF radios, and there wasn't a UHF radio in Korea. So they had to be monitored, and I flew Mustangs, and we hauled napalm, and you know what all. The knee jerk, the first time I knew a knee jerk was and I met my replacement, F-86. I was on top of the world. I was driving an F-86F, and, we were doing what we'd been doing. And we had so many F-86 jocks that they didn't know what to do with them. And we got a new commander in. And if you weren't a regular officer and a graduate of F-86 school, you were looking for a new job. I went to Seoul to a reunion, kind of like this, only it was the University of Missouri. We had a reunion there, and guess who was there? Maxwell Taylor. He went to Missouri, and we were powwowing and talking about the sad things of life of being kicked out. Well, I was happy because I was going to go up and fly the F-86 Recce Bird, which they had their Kempo, but didn't have a pilot. And when I showed back up at the base, I was surprised to find out that the guys that I've been flying with had a party the night before and shot the lights out, and they were really perturbed, to say the least, because they thought we were having a riot. And we were all kicked out very rapidly, and we went to Mosquito outfit. And that's how I became a Mosquito, and I didn't know that was lead-in training for the SR. But on a myth, and I'll disperse one of the myths right now. Well, it will not go over 100,000 feet, and the other one was that you'll be scared that you're going to get lost traveling at that speed. And yes, I was. I was one of the guys scared of being lost traveling over 2,000 miles an hour. But I'll disperse that because at that speed, you'll see something you recognize. You can see a long ways from 85,000 feet. And it's those big hills they call the Rockies, or that ribbon they call the Mississippi, or that big lake they call Atlantic. And they come up pretty fast because you can cross all that in 1 hour. And that's just I couldn't hold a job. Some of the main airplanes I flew when I came back, I was flying T-Birds, and at the same table with me was Gus Grissom. We flew together for 3 years. Then I went to B-47s. I got the first multi-engine assignment. No way am I going to fly multi-engine. I did, had an all-lieutenant crew, and we skunked the rest of the wing so bad we more than doubled anybody in points because we didn't know what we were doing. They upgraded us, made us a lead crew, and the order come in as we're a lead crew to go to Loring, and I was there. I went to Loring, all lieutenant crew in B-52s, unheard of. And then I went on and flew the C-47 at school because I had tailwheel time, and I become an IP after 2 rides. And then C-39, and then I guess the silver platter of my career is the SR-71, and you'll see it over here. Please bow. And Because you're still paying for the fuel. And then my last assignment was the RC-135s in Athens, Greece, at which the troops there set a record that'll never be broken. And you never say never, but they went 1,056 days and never dropped a sortie, and we flew every morning at 4:30, 7 days a week, for 1,056 days. But they would have thrown that cotton picking airplane. I've never seen maintenance guys so gung-ho as they were there. And guess what? Only thing we had to do, same thing that my instructor told me we had to do, and I asked him. He started me in graduation, and then he graduated. He went to Korea and flew his 100 missions and was back to graduate. He's flying up to 7 sorties a day, and they didn't even refuel between it. That's when they was down to Busan. Just go get a load and dump it, get a load and dump it. And he come back and graduated. But he left a case of beer in the seat. And what did we do to motivate the troops in Athens? If you haven't got Bud, you don't have beer. And the airplane come over every 2 weeks and it was loaded. This is a forgotten war. And I, more so that when I was tapped to come here to find out what was out there and who's doing what, and found out that some people have rewritten history. I've seen that in the SR already, where they've rewritten history. The guys that Johnny come latelys, the guys that's written a lot of books, be careful. There was 2 squadrons when it started. And this is a little bit about Korea. The people there was unbelievable. I found them just decent, ordinary people like you and I. They could carry immensely things. These cotton picking A-frames have got wires that go over their shoulders. And we saw the Northern carrying ammo up the side of the mountain. And they had these things on their back, and they're very slow. But when the artillery started going back and forth, they'd get behind a rock. And they're like sheep. If one guy'd run over here because this rock is better, there'd be 5 more move get behind the same rock. And then they kept shifting back and forth on the front line. But the villages were sort of scattered out. And it's surprising to me that it was any left, because I was there 52 and 53, and I left just before the war was over. But man, that country is not too big, and we saturated it with bombs or napalm. And when I was in Mosquito, there was a little chapel that was up above, right at the front line, and I went up there to see what was going on, because we'd napalmed that when I was in the Mustang. And you go in there and it takes all the oxygen out. I guarantee the engine will quit when you get out the other side. And that's a long time before that mother starts when you come out the other side. But this guy was there, and he said, yeah, it had been overrun 3 times. But the villages, the walls are very thin. Anything they can find, they put on to make a shack out of and live. The Japanese were there for some 1910. I didn't know that until I started to look at this, but they occupied Korea since 1910. And then at the end of the war, we gave it away, I think. But this is Kaesong, right outside of K-46, where we had the Mustangs. We were down on the PSP strip in between the mountains, and 2 500-pound bombs, and you climbed out through the valleys and got airborne. But that was better than the F-84s over there. They had one little bomb and dropped it so high they didn't know where it had gone. So that's what we called them when we were forward air control. It's a little bit about Korea. We were arguing, trying to get Russia to come into the war to help us shut it down over there, and they finally come in at the very end. You see, when they arrived up there on the 8th month, and then we divided it up, they got the position going only 3 days later, and the Soviets meet the parallel on the 24th. They moved in, and the war was over, a month later, and we gave them half of it. Well, things evaluated it, and we moved along there, and we had a pre-election. But when one of the funniest things that happened on this is, you see the date line there. Look at that 50/01/15, and to my say, that's what started the war. This statement, I don't know why it was made, but it's a political statement that our line of defense stopped short of South Korea, and it wasn't very long until we were into a shooting war. They come across. Just threw this in. This is a Mustang on Christmas Day. We normally flew in 8 ships or 32. And this day we had 32 ships going on Christmas Day. And you can see what that's unnecessary that's setting up there at the right in the traffic pattern. This was Ike. He came over to visit the troops, as that was part of his campaign speech that he would come over, and he came over, and we in the Mustangs got to fly close cover, and then there was F-80s, 84s, and 86s above him while he toured the front line. We lost one Mustang on that tour, and it was very unfortunate. The ADs were airborne that day, and was making a strike, and hey, there's an AD, and he was pointing his nose coming over that way because that's where his strike was going. So the Mustang peeled off to go over there to see, hey, to identify him. And his buddy was sitting up high and saw this Mustang with his nose pointed toward it, fired one shot, and bingo. This is Chad Smith, very close friend, and also Howie Pearson here. This is an L5 that we had over there that a major started working on. He found a fuselage, and he got some wings from the rocks, and he'd ordered up an engine, and I was the second lieutenant and trying to do things for him. And we got this airplane and put it together, and I had my own personal airplane. When the airborne came over there, they had a photographer show up, and he wanted to go up and take pictures of the 82nd in action. Well, guess who got selected to go? And I'd flown some mission. I was a little bit sleepy when I got up there, but it took this guy up, and he didn't want to be behind and take pictures of elbows. He wanted to be in front and get pictures of eyeballs of these guys moving forward. So we took the L5, and I landed out in no man's land and put it down on the dirt. And I had my 45 there, and I went to sleep in this thing. And I came to, and a swagger stick hit the strut on that L5, and I'm looking at a full-bird colonel. What are you doing here? Get out of here. I can't tell you what I'm doing here, and I can't leave till the guy shows up. But that was my tour. Our checkout in the F-86 went very fast. They showed up with the airplane, and that one's yours. Get the crew chief, paint your name on it. Remember those days? Put your name on it. That brings the airplane back. Put the crew chief's name on the door. That makes sure it's ready to go. And then Dr. Spock come along, and we didn't have enough airplanes, so all the Johnnies can't have an airplane. Nobody can have an airplane. We had to take the names off the airplane. But that's the way we got checked out, 10 rides or 10 hours, whichever came first, and you were combat ready. This is a picture of K-8 over there. One of our troops on his second ride in the F-86. The gyros were 180 out of phase, and he was going the wrong direction, didn't know it. And he was running low on fuel, and they told him to climb. He climbed as high as it would go and ran out of petrol. He dead sticked into this, and they kept him drunk for about 2 weeks. I met the guy that replaced me at breakfast this morning. What an outfit. When, we're flying the F-86F and happy cowboys, and in comes this onslaught of 86 jocks, and they were sitting in the corner waiting for their turn to dance. And we got a brand new commander in. And if you don't have a regular commission and you are an F-86 jock, find yourself a job. And well, that's where I ended up. I became a Mosquito. This is the tactical air control was did by T6s. They started out with the L5s, Navions, and they went to the T6D right away. And then they upgraded the T6 and took the 550 out of it and put a 600 in it, but they hang 12 rockets on it, so it didn't go any faster. This is a breakdown of the organization. I flew in the 68th, and then when we went forward, I was part of the 6150th on the ground. And it's, you notice there that the United Kingdom, they had one guy. And only about 2 months ago, an email come out. And it's Peter from England. He was thinking about coming back to a reunion that just happened in Atlanta, the Mosquitos. And he sent a list of all the guys he'd flown with. He kept a diary of everything that went on. And I happened to be one of those guys, and they forwarded it to me. And Peter and I have sent emails back and forth. And while I was looking for pictures, there's a few of his in here. But Peter was in the back, and he has a different outlook. He was a tank commander. The T6 was somewhat vulnerable, and no, it wasn't. It's amazing to me. We got little battle damage as close as we flew. We flew 4-hour sorties. And when I was in the organization, we had two types of mosquitoes, those that came and put a whole tour in. Your 100 missions were in mosquitoes, you got 20 and then went to the front line for 3 months, then come back and finish up. For guys that went up there from fighters, your tour was a little shorter. You got your missions in and then you went up, and ours was a 1 month at the front line. And then we come back and finished up. But it was interesting to talk about the only time I got upset was artillery shell. And it completely flipped the T6 upside down, and the guy in the back seat became excited. He's an Army guy and says, we got a rod sticking out the back where you get very gentle with the airplane, took it back and landed. It happened to be the trim tab rod that went back to the back. He just hadn't looked back there before. This is the tactical air control. This is the old Jeep, and we got the brand new Jeep when I was over there, and I'd like to try a Humvee where we took the Jeeps, because the new Jeep would not climb the mountain where these old Willys and Fords that were made in World War II. They just could not get up there. They run out of. This is a picture that I found, was very replica in the early days. We were pretty solid at the K-47. We had PSP, but and this was our AWACS back in the Korea. It was a Goonie Bird. It was a relay, and it did very well. When we were in Mustangs, we had no nav gear. I still have my map. Got the circles, how far you're going to be on time, and the radials on it. If you fly this way and you're going to be over target when you break out. And when you come home, the witch's tit was right at the base, and that was our beacon to get home. And if it was bad, we got close together, and like ducks, we come down over the Yellow Sea and then turn around and come back. And and we come up the valleys underneath the stuff. And flying at L5, when we went to the K-55, I was a courier in that thing, and I made many trips back and forth. And one of the times I got in a dead-end valley. And on a mission coming back shortly after Christmas, we were in that dead-end valley. And I happened to be forward that day. Dead end, and trying to turn 4 airplanes around in a dead-end valley. And the guy that was leading that day wanted to know the direction to our landmark. And I gave him what I thought it was, just a wag. And we missed it maybe a mile. And he 085 my eye. This is the T6L, T6G. As I say, they changed the engine on it and give us 50 more horsepower, but they hung an extra set of rockets on. We had 12 of the phosphorus rockets to mark targets with. We also had them with the 30 caliber machine set, a gun pod that chased Bed Check Charlie. In a Mustang, we tried to change him, and when we were chasing him in a Mustang, it was always a slow one, and you couldn't find him at night anyway. That's pucker time when you're down amongst the hills trying to look up at him. Then we got up here and we tried to fly it with the T6, and they'd send a yak down and we'd outrun it. So this is my very first sortie. And I used to have hair like that, but I went to high altitude and it takes a toll on it. This was unnecessary. That's a different mountain. This is at K-47, and that's where we had the T6s. And this is taken off from K-14, and we got the F-86s in the background. Tanks. God, thank good Lord, he took me out of the Army and put me in the Air Corps. This is one that's, they had funny procedures. I didn't understand it. They'd all go out and do this thing out in the no man's land, and the tanks went out there, and one of them got the track beat up, so they laid down the smoke rods to get it out. And this is our front line where they're digging in. From the air, you can see almost anything. It's like when you fly over the United States, you look at the farmer's yard, and you can see the guy that keeps it clean and the one that don't. This is our camouflage that shows it up so you can see all that junk. That's Army junk, and camouflage really works when you're standing on the ground. There's a couple of the tanks out in the open. This is a double bend. I was right in the center part, and we flew there, as I say, 4 hours, and as long as the weather's good, we kept going to the same area. And if somebody made a new footpath to the new John, you knew about it because you knew every movement that happened up there, and you were able to call in the stripes and And having come there from a fighter and depended on these guys, hey, and I couldn't understand why they couldn't hit the target a little better with those rockets. And then when I fired them, they go like this. I know why they couldn't hit them. I was assigned to the 7th Division Artillery up there, and this was home. This is the guys I shared a tent with. And one thing that's different in the Army and the Air Force, they do everything by data rank. And being a second lieutenant, guess where I got to eat at General's Mess? I was on the opposite end of the table. And the exec one day when we was having dinner asked, hey, how do you get out of that F-86 if you get in trouble? It's very simple. You pull a little handle and the 20 millimeter knocks the canopy off, and the 50 millimeter is right behind it, hits you in the butt, and out you go. Well, I stood very erect for a while a guy was really dressing me down for talking to the general that way about that's the way you get out of an airplane. I said, well, it was all true. This is we're at the forward tent. We're a TACP, and they took pretty good care of the officers, but the enlisted troops, I didn't find that they were that far different than we were. And this is an oil barrel which fueled their tent. And the Army was out early in the morning, and they only had enough oil for a little bit. And these guys only got enough oil for a little bit. And being Air Force, we were low on the tent. But our Jeep didn't get very good gas mileage, and it got briefed at the morning briefing because it's only getting about 2 miles to the gallon, because we were taking that 5-gallon can and putting it in this barrel with the oil so these guys could have some heat. This is the arrival of the general, and up on the hill, if you saw that yellow flag, we put that up so the guys, the airborne or the Mosquito, knew that there was a guy supposed to be there. The Army guys did have entertainment. This is Laura. If you all remember her, Piper Laura. Well, guess who else was on that tour? Maryland. But this was the star. If you look real close, you'll see a bath on the front line right in the middle. And this is some of Peter's film. He emailed me and I said, you got any pictures? I was sending, so he sent me a whole email, but it was in Mimi and I couldn't break it. And I couldn't find anybody to break it. And I said, send me one. And he sent me one that was in Mimi. And I said, copy it and send it to me. So that's the way we got him one at a time. But he was a tank driver. And you see the terrain up there? Vegetation was not good for a cornfield or much of anything because it had been completely bombed out or whatever. There was nothing left. This is airstrike. This is some of his pictures. And even they have a sense of humor. The lilies in a minefield. Napalm strike, as I say, that's the deadliest weapon I think we had over there. That was next to him, and of course that tank got hit. And this is with the line pretty well stabilized. It moved back and forth. Right at the end of the war, there was a lot of pushes. This is our Jeep we traveled around in incognito. You didn't know we were TACP. But take a look at that little guy there in the back seat. He's a radio guy, and the guy that's driving was a maintenance guy that took care of the Jeep. And this is our radio Jeep. I'm sure anybody that followed one of those, it didn't take them long to zero in on a Jeep. And I see that some of them didn't have the long wire. We had a long wire, and we would get along as far as that wire would get and get in the trench lines to put in strikes from up front because it wasn't long till the mortars were coming in. This is old Baldy. Just before I left the fighter outfit, every airplane in Korea, including the B-29s, were striking old Baldy for 3 days. And guess what? At the end of it, an American walked off, forgot his camera, and went back and got it. But they took over the hill. That hill changed time many times. We had many visitors at the front line. You never knew who they were, but at one time we were told it was senators, and it struck me kind of funny, but the guy had his helmet on backwards, and after the guys put the strikes in, he whispered on the front line, are they going to napalm now? No, it show's over. But we had a lot of that up here. The Army, it was interesting to me to follow the artillery that they were doing. And when we went to the front line, there was part of the roads that was between no man's land, and you had good information about the going. That's the front line. And God, I was trim back then. Do you guys have that problem with things changing a bit as you go along? But we're just in front of the hill, down on the front face, and that's where we strung the wire around to. This Ethiopians, they were right next door to us, and I made another mistake in my life. I was in Greece and had a chance to go to Ethiopia and meet these guys, and then the government flipped over. But I went on a patrol one night with these guys, and you don't never want to do that either, because you can't see them. And this is a Ford tank. I got to drive a tank, and you don't want to do that either. I drove that thing around, and that's a dirty job, and you're everybody's target. If you got a tank, they're all shooting at you. They used these things for artillery. The tank could get up there, and they put it on the hill, and it was already in a bunker, and they fired out. Then if they had artillery, they'd take truckloads of ammo, and they'd go out in the field and fire up their ammo, and they barraged the certain areas but they moved them around a lot, even with the stable front. There's a little guy in the back of the Jeep. That's Dick. And this is Peter from England that flew in the back seat with her. They were down in Atlanta here 2 weeks ago. Okay. I've covered it in one quick to get it back on the schedule here. Get any questions? Yes.
I was in the 18th the same time you were, 67th Squadron. I was the wing training officer later on, and I might have checked you out and taken you to the Nakton gunnery range and then out to drop the water-filled napalm tanks and then on your dollar mission. Do you remember me?
When did I run it through the recall? I don't have memory loss. Mine is a recall problem. It's kind of like my computer.
Okay, you know where the 11th, the VAC hospital was?
Yeah?
Okay, I was there at K-46 and along in about August, we behaved so badly down there with the nurses, they put us off limits, and the 18th couldn't go down. We couldn't go down there anymore for a while.
Well, there's lots of stories I can tell about Korea, but one leads to another, and so forth.
That sounds like a hooch story, doesn't it? That sounds like Colonel Hain. Thank you very much.
Okay.